Hello YouTube folks, welcome to my channel. My name is Steph and today I am going to be going through 50 books, 50 books on my TBR for almost 50 followers. I have 49 as of this morning, and because I just hit my goal for 2024 of 50 reads. So I have this huge document. I'm just gonna read like the Goodreads synopsis. I'll put a little picture down here so you can read along. If I try to talk about 50 books, this video is going to be 7 million years long. And I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in editing that much footage today. So sit back, relax, listen to me read some synopses and go through all of the 50 books on my TBR. Most of which, I'm hoping to read this year. Since I've already hit 50 books and we're a little over halfway done with the year, I feel like I'm gonna get a good chunk of these in. Let's get started. The first book on this list is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. Practical, unassuming Jane Shoringfield has done the calculations and decided that the most secure path forward is this: a husband in a marriage of convenience who will allow her to remain independent and occupied with meaningful work. Her first choice, the dashing but reclusive Dr. Augustine Lawrence, agrees to her proposal with only one condition: that she must never visit Linridge Hall, his crumbling family manor outside of town. Yet on their wedding night, an accident strands her at his door in a pitch-black rainstorm, and she finds him changed. Gone is the bold, courageous surgeon, and in his place is a terrified, paranoid man. One who cannot tell reality from nightmare and fears Jane is an apparition come to haunt him. By morning, Augustine is himself again, but Jane knows something is deeply wrong at Linridge Hall, and with the man she has so hastily bound herself safely to. Interesting. I have a copy of this. A lot of these are books that I have on my shelves that I haven't read yet that I'm trying really hard to get myself interested in. The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. A world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. The house of Berithnet has ruled Innis in Ys for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabrin the Ninth must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Ede Durian is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Ede keeps a watchful eye on Sabrin, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the dark sea, Tanae has trained to be a dragon rider since she was a child, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. Bunny by Mona Awad. Samantha Heather Makey couldn't be more of an outsider in her small, highly selective MFA program at New England's Warren University. A scholarship student who prefers the company of her dark imagination to that of most people, she is utterly repelled by the rest of her fiction writing cohort, a clique of unbearingly twee rich girls who call each other Bunny and seem to move and speak as one. But everything changes when Samantha receives an invitation to the Bunny's fabled smut salon and finds herself inexplicably drawn to their front door, ditching her only friend Ava in the process. Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. The Emperor needs necromancers. The ninth necromancer needs a swordman. Gideon has a sword, some dirty magazines, and no more time for undead bullshit. Brought up by unfriendly, ossifying nuns, ancient retainers, and countless skeletons, Gideon is ready to abandon a life of servitude and an afterlife as a reanimated corpse. She packs up her sword, her shoes, and her dirty magazines, and prepares to launch her daring escape. But her childhood nemesis won't set her free without a service. Harrow Hark Nonagesimus. Did I say it right? Reverend daughter of the Ninth House and Bone Witch Extraordinaire has been summoned into action. The Emperor has invited the heirs to each of his loyal houses to a deadly trial of wits and skill. If Harrow Hark succeeds, she will become an immortal, all-powerful servant of the resurrection, but no necromancer can ascend without their cavalier. Without Gideon's sword, Harrow will fail, and the Ninth House will die. Of course, some things are better left dead. Literally all of R.F. Kuang's books are on this list, so get ready to hear some of that. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. When Rin aced the Q, the empire-wide test to find the most talented youth to learn at the academies, it was a shock to everyone. To the test officials, who couldn't believe a war orphan from Rooster Province could pass without cheating. To Rin's guardians, who believed they'd finally be able to marry her off and further their criminal enterprise. And to Rin herself, who realized she was finally free of the servitude and despair that had made up her daily existence. That she got into Signgard, the most elite military school in Nikan, was even more surprising. But surprises aren't always good, because being a dark-skinned peasant girl from the south is not an easy thing at Signgard. Targeted from the outset of rival classmates for her color, poverty, and gender, Rin discovers she possesses a lethal, unearthly power, an aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism. The Pain Gap, How Sexism and Racism in Healthcare Kill Women, by Anousheh Hossein. Explore real women's tales of healthcare trauma and medical misogyny with this meticulously researched, in-depth examination of the women's health crisis in America and what we can do about it. Babel, An Arcane History by R.F. Kuang. An act of translation is always an act of betrayal. 1828. Robin Swift, orphaned by cholera in Canton, is brought to London by the mysterious Professor Lovell. There, he trains for years in Latin, ancient Greek, and Chinese, all in preparation for the day he'll enroll in Oxford University's prestigious Royal Institute of Translation, also known as Babel. Babel is the World Center for Translation and, more importantly, magic. Silverworking, the art of manifesting the meaning lost in translation using enchanted silver bars, has made the British unparalleled in power, as its knowledge serves the empire's quest for colonization. For Robin, Oxford is a utopia dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge, but knowledge obeys power, and as a Chinese boy raised in Britain, Robin realizes serving Babel means betraying his motherland. As his studies progress, Robin finds himself caught between Babel and the shadowy Hermes Society, an organization dedicated to stopping imperial expansion. When Britain pursues an unjust war with China over silver and opium, Robin must decide. Never Whistle at Night, an indigenous dark fiction anthology. There were many authors who contributed to this book, but I just listed the top two, Shane Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr. Many indigenous people believe that one should never whistle at night. This belief takes many forms. For instance, Native Hawaiians believe it summons the Hakai Po, the spirits of ancient warriors, and Native Mexicans says it calls Lechuza, a witch that can transform into an owl. But what all these legends hold in common is the certainty that whistling at night can cause evil spirits to appear and even follow you home. Heavenly Tyrant by Xuan Zhao. This book has pushed off its publishing date several times, but Goodreads says it's coming out in December of this year, so I kept it on this list, so hopefully I can read it this year, but we'll see. After suffering devastating loss and making drastic decisions, Zetian finds herself at the seat of power in Huaxia. But she has also learned that her world is not as it seems, and revelations about an enemy more daunting than Zetian imagined forces her to share power with a dangerous man she cannot simply depose. Despite having vastly different ideas about how they must deconstruct the corrupt and misogynist system that plagues their country, Zetian must join this man in a dance of truth and lies and perform their roles to perfection in order to take down their common enemy, who seeks to control them as puppets while dangling one of Zetian's loved ones as a hostage. The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. In a shabby house, on a shabby street, in the new capital of Madrid, Lucia Catado uses scraps of magic to get through her days of endless toil as a scullion. But when her scheming mistress discovers the lump of a servant cowering in the kitchen is actually hiding a talent for little miracle, she demands Lucia use those gifts to better the family's social position. What begins as simple amusement for the bored nobility takes a perilous turn when Lucia garners the notice of Antonio Perez, the disgraced secretary to Spain's king. Still reeling from the defeat of his armada, the king is desperate for any advantage in the war against England's heretic queen, and Perez will stop at nothing to regain the king's favor. Determined to seize this one chance to better her fortunes, Lucia plunges into a world of seers and alchemists, holy men and hucksters, where the line between magic, science, and fraud is never certain. But as her notoriety grows, so does the danger that her Jewish blood will doom her in the Inquisition's wrath. She will have to use every bit of her wit and will to survive, even if that means enlisting the help of Gullion Santangel, an embittered immortal familiar whose secrets could prove deadly for them both. He, She, They, How We Talk About Gender and Why It Matters by Skylar Baylor. Go-to expert on gender identity, Skylar Baylor, offers an essential, urgent guide that changes the conversation. Anti-transgender legislation is being introduced in state governments around the United States in record-breaking numbers. Trans people are under attack in sports, healthcare, school curriculum, bathroom bars, and nearly every walk of life. He, she, they clearly and compassionately addresses fundamental topics from why being transgender is not a choice and why pronouns are important, to more complex issues including how gender-affirming healthcare can be life-saving and why allowing trans youth to play sports is good for all kids. The Voyage Home by Pat Barker. This is the third book in the Silence of the Girls trilogy. Continuing the story of the captured Trojan women as they set sail from Mycenae with the victorious Greeks, this new novel centers on the fate of Cassandra, daughter of King Priam, priestess of Apollo, and a prophet condemned never to be heeded. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Under the influence of their charismatic classics professor, a group of clever, eccentric misfits at an elite New England college discover a way of thinking and living that is a world away from the humdrum existence of their contemporaries. But when they go beyond the boundaries of normal morality, they slip gradually from obsession to corruption and betrayal, and at last, inexorably, into evil. Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. A year into her dream job at a cutthroat Silicon Valley startup, Cassie finds herself trapped in a corporate nightmare. In addition to the long hours, toxic bosses, and unethical projects, she struggles to reconcile the glittering promise of a city where obscene wealth lives alongside abject poverty. Ivy League grads complain about the snack selection from a conference room with a view of unhoused people bathing in the bay. Startup burnouts leap into the paths of commuter trains, and men set themselves on fire in the streets. Though isolated, Cassie is never alone. From her earliest memory, a miniature black hole has been her constant companion. It feeds on her depression and anxiety, its size changing in relation to her distress. The black hole watches, but it also waits. Its relentless pull draws Cassie ever closer as the world around her unravels. When her CEO's demand crosses an illegal threshold and she ends up unexpectedly pregnant, Cassie must decide where the tempting fruits of Silicon Valley are really worth it. It's Not Hysteria, Everything You Need to Know About Your Reproductive Health by Karen Tang, an inclusive and essential guide to reproductive health, including period problems, pelvic pain, menopause, fertility, sexual health, vaginal and urinary conditions, and overall well-being, from leading expert Dr. Tang. One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. In New York City, where we lay our scene, two rival witch families fight to maintain control of their respective criminal ventures. On one side of the conflict are the Antonova sisters, each one beautiful, cunning, and ruthless, and their mother, the elusive supplier of the premium intoxicants known only as Baba Yaga. On the other side, the influential Fedori brothers serve their father, the crime boss known as Koshie the Deathless, whose community extortion ventures dominate the shadows of magical Manhattan. After 12 years of tenuous coexistence, a change in one family's interests causes a rift in the existing stalemate. When bad blood brings both families to the precipice of disaster, fate intervenes with a chance encounter, and in the aftershocks of a resurrected conflict, everyone must choose a side. As each of the siblings struggles to stake their claim, fraying loyalties threaten to rot each side from the inside out. The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi. It's 1889. The city is on the cusp of industry and power, and the Exposition Universelle has breathed new life into the streets and dredged up ancient secrets. Here, no one keeps tabs on dark truths better than treasure hunter and wealthy hotelier Severin Montagnet Allery. What a name. When the elite, ever-powerful Order of Babel coerces him to help them on a mission, Severin is offered a treasure that he never imagined, his true inheritance. To hunt down the ancient artifact the Order seeks, Severin calls upon a band of unlikely experts, an engineer with a debt to pay, a historian banished from his home, a dancer with a sinister past, and a brother in arms if not blood. Together, they will join Severin as he explores the dark, glittering heart of Paris. What they find might change the course of history, but only if they can stay alive. Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. Y'all know how I feel about Andrew Joseph White. Ecstatic for his third book. A gut-wrenching story following a trans-autistic teen who survives an attempted murder, only to be drawn into the generational struggle between the rural poor and those who exploit them. On the night Miles Abernathy, 16-year-old socialist and proud West Virginian, comes out as trans to his parents, he sneaks off to a party, carrying evidence that may finally turn the tide of the blood feud plaguing Twist Creek. Photos that prove the county's Sheriff Davies was responsible for the so-called accident that injured his dad, killed others, and crushed their grassroots efforts to unseat him. The feud began 100 years ago when Miles' great-great-grandfather, St. Abernathy, incited a miners' rebellion that ended with a public execution at the hands of law enforcement. Now, Miles becomes the feud's latest victim as the sheriff's son and his friends sniff out the evidence, follow him through the woods, and beat him nearly to death. The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. January 1918. Laura Ivan was a revered field nurse until she was wounded and discharged from the medical corps, leaving behind a brother still fighting in Flanders. Now home in Halifax, Canada, she receives word of Freddie's death in combat, along with his personal effects. But something doesn't make sense. Determined to uncover the truth, Laura returns to Belgium as a volunteer at a private hospital. Soon after leaving, she hears whispers about haunted trenches and a strange hotelier whose wine gives soldiers the gift of oblivion. Could Freddie have escaped the battlefield, only to fall prey to something or someone else? Wah, wah, wah. Cultish, The Language of Fantasism by Amanda Montell. I read Wordslot earlier this year. Fantastic. Want to read her other book? What makes cults so intriguing and frightening? What makes them powerful? The reason why so many of us binge Manson documentaries by the dozen and fall down rabbit holes researching suburban moms gone QAnon is because we're looking for a satisfying explanation for what causes people to join, and more importantly, stay in extreme groups. We secretly want to know, how could it happen to me? Amanda Montell's argument is that, on some level, it already has. Our culture tends to provide pretty flimsy answers to questions of cult influence, mostly having to do with vague talk of brainwashing. But the true answer has nothing to do with freaking mind control or wizardry or Kool-Aid. In Cultish, Montell argues that the key to manufacturing intense ideology, community, and us-them attitudes all comes down to language. In both positive ways and shadowy ones, cultish language is something we hear and are influenced by every single day. Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Criado Perez. Data is fundamental to the modern world. From economic development to healthcare to education and public policy, we rely on numbers to allocate resources and make crucial decisions. But because so much data fails to take into account gender, because it treats men as the default and women as atypical, bias and discrimination are baked into our systems, and women pay tremendous costs for this bias in time, money, and often with their lives. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. If you recall from an earlier video, I think I talked about how I started Persuasion by Jane Austen and I DNF'd it because I had no idea what was going on. I think I need to start my Jane Austen journey with her most popular one. As like, you know, the palette starter, if you will. Since its immediate success in 1813, Pride and Prejudice has remained one of the most popular novels in the English language. Jane Austen called this brilliant work her own darling child, and its vivacious heroine, Elizabeth Bennet, as delightful a creature as ever appeared in print. The romantic clash between the opinionated Elizabeth and her proud beau, Mr. Darcy, is a splendid performance of civilized sparring, and Jane Austen's radiant wit sparkles as her characters dance a delicate quadrille of flirtation and intrigue, making this book the most superb comedy of manners of Regency England. Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Authors June Hayward and Athena Liu were supposed to be twin rising stars, but Athena is a literary darling. Jane Howard is a literary nobody. Who wants stories about basic white girls? June thinks. So when June witnesses Athena's death in a freak accident, she acts on impulse. She steals Athena's just-finished masterpiece, an experimental novel about the unsung contributions of Chinese laborers during World War I. So what if June edits Athena's novel and sends it to her agent as her own work? So what if she lets her new publisher rebrand her as Juniper Song, complete with an ambiguously ethnic author photo? Doesn't this piece of history deserve to be told, whoever the teller? That's what June claims, and the New York Times bestseller list seems to agree. So excited to read this one. I went to a author's talk with R.F. Kuang, and she talked a lot about Yellowface, because a lot of people had questions, and they were like, why would you write something like this? Like, it's very controversial, and you're just causing issues. And she was like, that was the point. That was the point. And I was gagged. A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. This is the second book in the Psalm for the Wild-Built Robot and, Monk and Robot series. After touring the rural areas of Panga, sibling Dex, a tea monk of some renown, and Moscap, a robot sent on a quest to determine what humanity really needs, turn their attention to the villages and cities of the little moon they call home. They hope to find the answers they seek while making new friends, learning new concepts, and experiencing the entropic nature of the universe. Becky Chambers' new series continues to ask, in a world where people have what they want, does having more even matter? They're going to need to ask it a lot. Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez. In these wildly imaginative, devilishly daring tales of the macabre, internationally best-selling author Mariana Enriquez brings contemporary Argentina to vibrant life as a place where shocking inequality, violence, and corruption are the law of the land, while military dictatorship and legions of desaparecidos, I'm not getting it right, I'm so sorry, I tried, loom large in the collective memory. In these stories, reminiscent of Shirley Jackson and Julio Cortázar, three young friends distract themselves with drugs and pain in the midst of a government-enforced blackout. A girl with nothing to lose steps into an abandoned house and never comes back out. To protest a viral form of domestic violence, a group of women set themselves on fire. But alongside black magic and disturbing disappearances, these stories are fueled by compassion for the frightened and the lost, ultimately bringing these characters, mothers and daughters, husbands and wives, into a surprisingly familiar reality. The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. In a small American town, the local residents are abuzz with excitement and nervousness when they wake on the morning of the 27th of June. Everything has been prepared for the town's annual tradition, a lottery in which every family must participate and no one wants to win. I read Shirley Jackson's Haunting of Hill House and I didn't love it, so I want to give her really popular short story a chance. The Six Deaths of the Saint by Alex E. Harrow. The Saint of War spares the life of a servant girl so she can fulfill her destiny as the kingdom's greatest warrior in the short story of love and loyalty by the New York Times bestselling author Alex E. Harrow. Always mindful of the debt she owes, the girl finds her worth as a weapon in the hand of the prince. Her victories make him a king, then an emperor. The bard sings her name, and her enemies fear it. But the war never ends, and the cost keeps rising. How many times will she repeat her own story? Nobody Needs to Know, a memoir by Pigeon Pagonis. From intersex activist Pigeon Pagonis comes a candid and real-life affirming true story of identity, lies, family secrets, and the healing power of truth. Pigeon Pagonis always felt like their life was a constant attempt to fit in with other girls, a feeling that was only exacerbated when puberty failed to hit. They never understood why until they uncovered the secret that had haunted their childhood. Bouncing between Chicago home and the city's children's hospital, Pigeon weathered a series of traumatic surgeries, fabrication, and misdirections. It wasn't until college that Pigeon pieced together the puzzle that they had been born intersex but raised as a girl, their life shaped by lies that left them physically and mentally scarred. But for Pigeon, what began as a shameful and traumatic discovery transformed into a painful yet joyous journey of self-love, growth, and healing. All About Love, New Visions by Bell Hooks. All About Love offers radical new ways to think about love by showing its interconnectedness in our private and public lives. In 11 concise chapters, Hooks explains how everyday notions of what it means to give and receive love often fails us, and how these ideals are established in early childhood. She offers a rethinking of self-love without narcissism that will bring peace and compassion to our personal and professional lives, and asserts the place of love to end struggles between individuals, in communities, and among societies. Xenos by Dan Abnett. This was recommended to me by a friend. The Inquisition moves amongst mankind like an avenging shadow, striking down the enemies of humanity with complete ruthlessness. Inquisitor Eisenhorn faces a vast interstellar cabal and the dark power of daemons, all racing to recover an arcane text of supreme and abominable power, an ancient tome known as the Necrotooth. Book 1 in the Eisenhorn trilogy sets a new standard in action and adventure. The Odyssey by Homer. I'm halfway done with the Iliad right now. Call me crazy, call me a nerd. I don't know what to tell you. I'm reading it. So the Odyssey is on my TBR because obviously I want to finish the duology. Odysseus' reliance on his wit and willingness for survival in his encounters with divine and natural forces during his 10-year voyage home to Ithaca after the Trojan War is at once a timeless human story and an individual test of moral endurance. Bad Sex, Truth, Pleasure, and an Unfinished Revolution by Nona Willis Aronowitz. The daughter of Ellen Willis, a second-wave feminist fame, Nona grew up not only believing the feminist revolution was thriving, but that she was a result. She was sexually liberated, wrote her college thesis on 1970s porn, and had genuinely good sex from the time she was a teen. But then at 24, she entered into an ironic and unplanned marriage that became a surprisingly seductive trap into conventional life. But 8 years later, that partnership was starting to show signs of wear and eventually culminated in divorce. It was in that moment of personal sea change and political tumult that Nona turned to her late mother's writing and other revolutionaries of the past for guidance, all while navigating the modern dating world. In a time when sex has never been more accepted and feminism has never been more mainstream, what does it mean to be sexually liberated? The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. I can't believe I haven't read this yet. It's been on my TBR for way too long. Jarvis Cotton's great-great-grandfather could not vote as a slave. His great-grandfather was beaten to death by the Ku Klux Klan for attempting to vote. His grandfather was prevented from voting by Klan intimidation. His father was barred by polling taxes and literacy tests. Today, Cotton cannot vote because he, like many black men in the United States, has been labeled a felon and is currently on parole. As the United States celebrates the nation's triumph over race with the election of Barack Obama, the majority of young black men in major American cities are locked behind bars or have been labeled felons for life. Although Jim Crow laws have been wiped off the books, an astounding percentage of the African American community remains trapped in a subordinate status, much like their grandparents before them. Letting Magic In, a memoir of becoming by Maya Toll. From Maya Toll, the best-selling author of the Wild Wisdom series in the Night School, comes the enchanted story of her own magical awakening, a journey from Brooklyn to Ireland that will inspire readers to uncover their own inner magic. What is the word for craving a relationship with the earth, plants, rocks, and stars? What do you call someone who finds their spirit sparked by these relationships, whose concept of the sacred is altered by the scent of jasmine in bloom or the deep indigo of a sky awaiting nightfall? We're taught that doctors know our bodies and priests know our souls. But what if you're a person seeking to understand both for yourself without an intermediary? What is the word for these feelings and the person we become when we honor them? The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. I got this at like a thrift store or something. Like, I recognize the author, so I just bought the book. So I'm going to try to read it. Texas, 1934. Millions are out of work and a drought has broken the Great Plains. Farmers are fighting to keep their land and their livelihoods as the crops are failing, the water is drying up, and dust threatens to bury them all. One of the darkest periods of the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl era, has arrived with a vengeance. In this uncertain and dangerous time, Elsa Martinelli, like so many of her neighbors, must make an agonizing choice: fight for the land she loves, or go west to California in search of a better life. The Dutch House by Anne Patchett. At the end of the Second World War, Cyril Conroy combines luck and a single canny investment to begin an enormous real estate empire, propelling his family from poverty to enormous wealth. His first order of business is to buy the Dutch House, a lavish estate in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia. Meant as a surprise for his wife, the house sets in motion the undoing of everyone he loves. The story is told by Cyril's son Danny, as he and his older sister, the brilliantly acerbic and self-assured Maeve, are exiled from the house where they grew up by their stepmother. The two wealthy siblings are thrown back into poverty and their parents had escaped from, and find that all they have to count on is one another. It is this unshakable bond between them that both saves their lives and thwarts their futures. Castles in Their Bones by Laura Sebastian. I already know I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of these names. Let's do our best, friends. Let's do our best. Empress Margaret has had plans for her daughters since the day they were born. Princesses Sophrona, Daphne, and Beatrice will be queens. And now, age 16, they each must leave their homeland and marry their princes. Beautiful, smart, and demure, the triplets appear to be the perfect brides. Because Margaret knows there is one common truth. Everyone underestimates a girl, which is a grave mistake. Sophronia, Daphne, and Beatrice are no innocents. They have been trained since birth in the arts of deception, seduction, and violence with a singular goal, to bring down monarchies, and their marriages are merely the first stage of their mother's grand vision, to one day reign over the entire continent of Asteria. The princesses have spent their lives preparing, and now they are ready, each with their own secret skill, and each with a single wish, pulled from the stars. Only, the stars have their own plans, and their mother hasn't told them all of hers. The Body by Stephen King. Set in the fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine. It's 1960 in the fictional town of Castle Rock, Maine. Ray Brower, a boy from a nearby town, has disappeared, and 12-year-old Gordy LaChance and his 3 friends set out on a quest to find his body along the railroad tracks. During the course of their journey, Gordy, Chris Chambers, Teddy Duchamp, and Vern Tessio come to terms with death and the hard truths of growing up in a small factory town that doesn't offer much in the way of a future. Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. In Memoir of a Geisha, we enter a world where appearances are paramount, where a girl's virginity is auctioned to the highest bidder, where women are trained to beguile the most powerful men, and where love is scorned as an illusion. It is a unique and triumphant work of fiction, at once romantic, erotic, suspenseful, and completely unforgettable. Parable of a Sower by Octavia E. Butler. In 2024, with the world descending into madness and anarchy, that's literally this year, gagged, one woman begins a fateful journey towards a better future. Lauren Alamina and her family live in one of the only safe neighborhoods remaining on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Behind the walls of their defended enclave, Lauren's father, a preacher, and a handful of other citizens try to salvage what remains of a culture that has been destroyed by drugs, disease, war, and chronic water shortages. While her father tries to lead people on the righteous path, Lauren struggles with hyperempathy, a condition that makes her extraordinarily sensitive to the pain of others. When fire destroys their compound, Lauren's family is killed and she is forced out into a world that is fraught with danger. With a handful of other refugees, Lauren must make her way north to safety, along the way conceiving a revolutionary idea that may mean salvation for all mankind. Whew, we're almost done, y'all. 10 more. 50 books is a lot to talk about. I really did this to myself, didn't I? I'm so glad that I'm just reading the Goodreads description instead of actually explaining these books myself, because too much. It would be too much. If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. Oliver Marks has just served 10 years in jail for a murder he may or may not have committed. On the day he's released, he's greeted by the man who put him in prison. Detective Colburn is retiring, but before he does, he wants to know what really happened a decade ago. As one of 7 young actors studying Shakespeare at an elite arts college, Oliver and his friends play the same roles on stage and off: hero, villain, tyrant, temptress, ingenue, extra. But when the casting changes and the secondary characters usurp the stars, the play spilled dangerously over into real life, and one of them is found dead. The rest face their greatest acting challenge yet, convincing the police and themselves that they are blameless. What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. Bolivian-Argentinian Inez Oliveira belongs to the glittering upper society of 19th century Buenos Aires, and like the rest of the world, the town is steeped in old world magic that's been largely left behind or forgotten. Inez has everything a girl might want, except for the one thing she yearns for the most: her globe-trotting parents, who frequently leave her behind. Love that word, globe-trotting. Yes. When she receives word of their magic deaths, Inez inherits her massive fortune and a mysterious guardian, an archaeologist in partnership with his Egyptian brother-in-law. Yearning for answers, Inez sails to Cairo, bringing her sketch pads and an ancient golden ring her father sent to her for safekeeping before he died. But upon her arrival, the old world magic tethered to the ring pulls her down a path where she soon discovers that there's more to her parents' disappearance than what her guardian led her to believe. Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. Anise, sold south by the white enslaver who fathered her, is the reader's guide through this hellscape. As she struggles through the miles-long march, Anise turns inward, seeking comfort from memories of her mother and stories of her African warrior grandmother. Throughout, she opens herself to a world beyond this world, one teeming with of earth and water, of myth and history, spirits who nurture and give, and those who manipulate and take. While Ward leads readers through the descent, this, her 4th novel, is ultimately a story of rebirth and reclamation. The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. Trauma is a fact of life. Veterans and their families deal with the painful aftermath of combat. 1 in 5 Americans has been molested, 1 in 4 grew up with alcoholics, 1 in 3 couples have engaged in physical violence. That's crazy. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the world's foremost experts on trauma, has spent over 3 decades working with survivors. In The Body Keeps the Score, he uses recent scientific advances to show how trauma literally reshapes both body and brain, compromising sufferers' capacities for pleasure, engagement, self-control, and trust. Ain't that the truth? What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing by Bruce D. Perry. Our earliest experiences shape our lives far down the road, and What Happened to You provides powerful scientific and emotional insights into the behavioral patterns so many of us struggle to understand. This book is going to change the way you see your life. Have you ever wondered, why did I do that? Or why can't I just control my behavior? Others may judge our reactions and think, what's wrong with that person, when questioning our emotions. It's easy to place the blame on ourselves, holding ourselves and those around us to an impossible standard. It's time we started asking a different question. The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I've seen like every adaptation, the musical, all the movies, and I haven't read the original text. Insanity. I have to read it now. Separated as girls, sisters Celie and Nettie sustain their loyalty to and hope in each other across time, distance, and silence. Through a series of letters spanning 20 years, first from Celie to God, then the sisters to each other despite the unknown, the novel draws readers into its rich and memorable portrayals of Celie, Nettie, Shugavery, and Sophia in their experiences. Coraline by Neil Gaiman. The day after they moved in, Coraline went exploring. In Coraline's family's new flat are 21 windows and 14 doors. 13 of the doors open and close, the 14th is locked, and on the other side is only a brick wall, until the day Coraline unlocks the door to find a passage to another flat in another house just like their own. Only it's different. At first, things seem marvelous in the other flat. The food is better, the toy box is filled with wind-up angels that flutter around the bedroom, books whose pictures writhe and crawl and shimmer, little dinosaur skulls that chatter in their teeth. But there's another mother and another father, and they want Coraline to stay with them and be their little girl. They want to change her and never let her go. Fun Home, a family tragicomic, Alison Bechdel. I've seen the musical, so I want to read the graphic novel. In this graphic memoir, Alison Bechdel charts her fraught relationship with her late father. Distant and exacting, Bruce Bechdel was an English teacher and director of the town funeral home, which Alison and her family referred to as the Fun Home. It was not until college that Alison, who had recently come out as a lesbian, discovered that her father was also gay. A few weeks after this revelation, he was dead, leaving a legacy of mystery for his daughter to resolve. Two left, y'all, two left. Let's go. Come As You Are, The Surprising New Science That Will Transform Your Sex Life by Emily Nagoski. An essential exploration of why and how women's sexuality works, based on groundbreaking research in brain science that will radically transform your sex life into one filled with confidence and joy. Researchers have spent the last decade trying to develop a pink pill for women to function like Viagra does for men. So where is it? Well, for reasons this book makes crystal clear, that pill will never exist. But as a result of the research that's gone into it, scientists in the last few years have learned more about how women's sexuality works than we ever thought possible, and Come As You Are explains it all. Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I've read Roxane Gay's other book. Oh, what is it? Difficult Women. I read that in high school. I probably need to reread it because I honestly don't remember a lot of it, but I haven't read Bad Feminist yet. Well, I think I've read excerpts from it, but I haven't read the full thing. In these funny and insightful essays, Roxane Gay takes us through the journey of her evolution as a woman of color, while also taking readers on a ride through culture in the last few years and commenting on the state of feminism today. The portrait that emerges is not only one of an incredibly insightful woman and continually growing to understand herself and our society, but also one of our culture. Oh my god. That was exhausting, but I did it. There is 50 books on my TBR. I'm sure more will pop up. I'm sure it's going to take me probably another year or two or maybe 3 to get through all 50 of these books, but I want to say thank you to my 49 subscribers and a special shout out to whoever the 50th subscriber will be. This video was a little bit dedicated to you, and also congrats to myself for hitting 50 books read in 2024, which was my 2024 goal. So I'm already there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed me yapping and yapping and yapping. Maybe you got some recommendations out of this. Maybe some of these synopses sound really interesting to you. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you want to do. I am not your mother, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.